shirtless panel with Karel and Aishwary from Polygon.
Is going to come back.
Full circle.
So if you just start off by saying how terrible this is for the developer community.
It's not. For developer community, no. For enterprise community, yes.
Yeah, that was my thought as well, just because I've been a developer for 8 years. So I was like, developers, they don't care at all about this, they love it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, but we did say that I'd give you the shirt off my back. So you've got a great foundation, but here let's cover more use cases here.
Thank you, sir.
Now you can.
All right, take the picture because I'm sorry, Dean, it's too uncomfortable. I just have to do this with the nipples out.
All right then.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining me. Apologies that I need to clown around and do this to you, but let's have a good fireside chat. A little bit about what we're building and what's going on here. Many of you know we've been working with Polygon for a while, trying to integrate IBC into the egg layer itself, as well as I think build out to be honest, a better, I don't even want to call it a modular experience, but a horizontally scaled experience. I think Polygon has been investing in that from the very start with multiple execution environments. Maybe nice if you give a quick rundown of everything that you guys are up to and the grand vision there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at Polygon, we have been all over the place. We accept that, we admit that. In the last 2 years, trying to figure out what we want to do next with one of the chains already working out and everything like that. And then Vitalik kept coming out and saying ZK is the end game. And Sandeep going all in yeah, ZK is the end game. So a couple of things that we did from there, we went out, we started working on, we first of all, because technically no one at Polygon was working on ZK and nobody had that kind of a deep intellect knowledge about it. We ended up acquiring 3 companies which were all separately building different components which would ultimately become a ZK EVM. And the biggest win that we achieved was getting all those 3 teams into one single room and saying, hey, don't figure it out separately, figure it out together. And that was, I think, the biggest win. That's one of the biggest reasons why Polygon was able to crack the ZK EVM. Yeah, though there were a lot of bugs and everything like that. But yeah, it was technically first functional ZK EVM that came into the market. And with that, we understood that how ZK would work, how it would scale. Yeah, it is. So if you look at the Ethereum's roadmap, ZK was not, as an end game meant it would be 8 years, 10 years down the line ZK. But it was the way, essentially Polygon solved it was ahead of time from that perspective. And Ethereum was kind of the way Ethereum is designed was not very friendly towards the ZK side, because the kind of computation that you require for ZK is something much more than the total block space that essentially the blocks can kind of acquire and everything like that. So we kind of fiddled with those problems and everything like that. And sooner we realized that with all the other blockchains also getting into the layer 2 stack, they launching their own stack. Even today, a lot of blockchains who have not even launched their L1s, getting their L2s first. So it's becoming a place where this is becoming more and more commodity. So how do we interconnect everyone just to ensure that, okay, everyone can have their own customizations, because technically everyone has their own ways to run a blockchain, build a blockchain and everything like that. But this whole aggregation, which is the biggest point of our work today, ensure that everything that is EVM, non-EVM over a period of time get connected. So I think with Union also, we have been really finding ways in which we can interconnect IBC into the overall Ag layer and see all the Cosmos chains going and interconnecting with the Ag layer directly from that perspective.
Yeah, that's something that excites me a lot. I'd say it's quite funny to see the 2 different approaches. Egg layer, I would say, to me at least, is almost a settlement layer, except that it settles itself again too. Union is more based around the concept of messages being transferred around, so it has a little bit of different properties, like the stuff I kind of showed in my talk. That's what you can do with Union. Egg layer is, I guess, a little bit more focused on actually ZKP aggregation, it competes a little bit with that. Something that I haven't really found too much documentation on yet, that I'm very curious about, is what does kind of the hardware landscape look like for the egg layer? With Union, we've like specifically optimized for basically at-home proving, and that's because we expect people to run solvers. So we want to make sure that if you're a solver, you don't need to spend $1 million a year on proving cost. But I guess for the egg layer, it's kind of different because you don't need a large network of provers. You technically just need like one entity to do it. Do you guys have like a massive GPU cluster, or what does that kind of look like from an infrastructure perspective?
Yeah, like I think from an Ethereum roadmap, this is exactly the same challenge with the kind of hardware as well, where kind of like, then this is not Polygon, this is like entire ZK community where we are trying to figure out how we can like optimize. Honestly talking, like optimization is still like a little bit ahead in the roadmap rather than like it's more like for shipping the product into it. And the way like kind of even the aggregation layer works is like, so the way we are looking at the problems today, so I'll talk about a couple of problems, which is like not just tech. First is like, I think the biggest problem and the challenge is cost. Like you go out and spin up all these chains and then you need all that infra into it. Like how do you kind of go out and build it to a level where it is pure commodity? So for example, like you need, when you launch a new chain, you need a USD to kind of go out and transact a native USD and everything like that. Yesterday we launched our Ag USD, which means that you can be in any chain. If you're connecting to the Ag layer, you have a native USD on day one with Agora. So like that way, essentially what it does is it takes away your huge amount of costs that you actually go and spend with existing stablecoin providers and saying like, oh, this is like, you need to wait a year, then you need to pay a couple of $1 million to get all those things in. So you don't. So that is one thing that we did. The second that we also like last week worked on is with Octo and like I think Magic, where potentially what we did is we're trying to create a front end for all the chains that are connecting to the Ag layer, where you have one balance. It doesn't matter which chain, backend, everything is abstracted away. So like a user wants to buy something on X chain, they have the balances on Y chain, they can kind of go out and from the front end, they can just go out and give the kind of a command that this is what I want to do. At the backend, the solvers, the intents and everything, at the backend are trying to solve that. So from that perspective, like the infra has to be intuitive enough for the user to not be like disturbed with 200 chains. Yeah, let there be 2,000 chains, 2 lakh chains, nobody should bother about that. And then like the aggregation layer kind of flowing it. And then the third, like from cost, the second thing, the third thing that essentially is also there is when a new chain comes in, like the new chains do not have a tremendous amount of transaction the moment they start. So they will start with, let's say, a smaller TPS and everything like that. But when they go out and aggregate directly on Ethereum, the cost of that batching and aggregating and putting that on Ethereum is high. So one of the features that we inbuilt in Aglayer was proof aggregation, where essentially all the pessimistic proofs that come from all the chains that is getting generated, we club that together, batch it, and then send one single batch into Ethereum, reducing the overall cost of the proof, so that thereby, so kind of like we're hitting problem from a perspective of how easy it could become to launch chains, and then like all the stacks are integrated. So it doesn't have to be, okay, you need to use Polygon to kind of go out and become a part of it. Use whatever stack, like we're starting with EVMs, but then with alt VMs in the future. So documentations and everything, I think the V0.2 version is like all the documentations and everything are coming first week next month. So you'll be able to see those documentations as well.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you a little bit on a hard question, because I heard alt VMs and a little bit of the architecture you described to me seems very similar to actually how Polkadot originally intended to do it. And I used to work in the Polkadot space and encountered the issues there. And at the core, like the tech is absolutely beautiful that they built. But actually, like down the road, it fell apart, for example, because there was not a unified asset standard. And even though you had like proofs and message passing, the fact that there wasn't like a unified asset standard across parachains really left that this like out of the box bridging didn't work, because you still had to know, all right, like my USDC on Akala has 6 decimals, look up in the source code what it's going to be on Picasso, etc. And I think that actually was the detriment, because in the end, all parachain teams invented their own asset modules, which all were different again, and so there was fragmentation. You mentioned like you're starting out with just EVM, so I guess like ERC20 or 777. But what's the plan after that for alt VMs? Is there a plan to like standardize assets as well to make this more composable?
I think there is something potentially where we're talking about AG standards, but this is like more from a perspective of which is more or less EVM, like EVM standards itself. But yeah, like on the AG, like we have those standards already that we are already building on, which essentially like the way we are looking at it with alt VMs, like we're still a bit far from the alt VM sides, but the way we are looking at from the alt VMs, how they are kind of interacting with us and everything. So we were like the first company is like Move VM. So we are trying to like find out the best ways in which we can do that. Have we cracked it? The devs haven't told me if they have. So I will have to go out and kind of check back on that. But technically, the first focus right now is more on EVM. So that like we already have a lot more EVMs. Alt VMs, like they're starting up, they're heating up. A lot of them are coming in. By the time they are like bigger ones, like probably we'll have all those things ready. But that's how we're looking at it.
In my experience, since we do both EVM and alt VMs already, the answer we derive at is there's not really a solution to do this and remain composable, and you just have to write a shit ton of code to deal with the different standards. We run like scrapers as well to fill up a DB with like token metadata that we provide over the GraphQL API, because it turns out like, it seems to just be a boring problem that takes hard engineering hours and just basically more data streams to solve. I think crypto has already passed the stage where you can actually like unify that portion nicely, especially if you do alt VM stuff. With kind of like this approach for the egg layer, so far you've described it as actually being very open and not Polygon aligned. Now, this may be a mean BD question, but what's then the end game for Polygon? Like, how does that fit in? What's after the egg layer, or how does it then indeed like benefit the Polygon ecosystem?
I think the biggest value accrual for us has been, and like I used to like before Polygon, like back when I was like working with Seba, the biggest thing I was doing was like Seba was doing was Polkadot ecosystem. So I have been like into the trenches of Polkadot when Kusama was $1. So I wrote it to $500 and I'm writing it back down again. But so from the point is like, I think some of the things that I learned was like initially the parachain loans and everything that happened was the super high prices and everything like that. And that till the time we approached like the later chains. So I think a lot of that from a perspective of economics did not add up in that sense. And I think one of the biggest thing that kind of differentiates kind of the way we are building Aggregated is like the distribution that we already have. So one of the things that we have been like really working on is how we connect Polygon POS into the Aggregated. Because if you look at Polygon POS, it's really very well connected. Like all the exchanges support it, all the market makers know about it. Every place like the liquidity can flow around. A lot of fintech integrations, like day before yesterday, we launched our remittances on Revolut as the flagship chain. So from that perspective, once that chain connects, it also gives headway to a lot more other chains to get interconnected. So imagine like any asset that essentially is on Polygon POS or any way. So if I'm building a new chain, instant of like going on day one and creating that on-ramp, off-ramp, exchange fee and everything like that, I can simply leverage that flow from Polygon POS. So that kind of like increases even more the utility of POS, but also gives a distribution advantage to anyone that is also joining us. And we leverage like the liquidity that is essentially already there, like 4-5 billion, whatever is already there with the bridge and the TVL and everything like that. So that gets created, which essentially is like the biggest influx of capital and liquidity that is going in. And with more stable versions and more chains coming in, which is like, it doesn't depend on like which chain it is in the EVM side, it potentially gives us more space in the design side and like distribution side. So like tomorrow, if any optimistic chain wants to come in, any Arbitrum chain wants to join in, they can join in. They're free to join. Everything is open to join. So from that perspective, that is where we are kind of like differentiating ourselves into like, it's not really like we are only building the tech. We are also giving you the distribution, the cost benefits and everything like that. And that is how it would work out.
Nice. For those who wonder how this fits into the Union picture, Polygon POS was originally built on the Cosmos SDK stack, or at least Tendermint.
Yeah, Tendermint.
Is it still Tendermint consensus?
It
Been
is,
updated a
but
bit in the meantime,
it is,
right?
but like we have modified a lot of those components. One of the like two biggest things that we did last year was taking Aptos's parallel STM version and implementing it on POS, which essentially has made us so good that the poly market thing went up, like all the transactions, no problem, no guy spikes. Like we had this inscriptions last year, chain that did not go down as like among all the other chains. So we are able to handle a lot more load from that perspective, and also like block finality has been one of the biggest challenges, which kind of I used to like curtail us a lot, because like your block confirmation, like people used to increase that to 400, 500 blocks, but with the new like tech integrating there, we've been like tremendously well doing well there. So like on an average, like you can go out and have the block finality much faster in less than 2 minutes, rather than waiting for 10, 20 minutes, which was like before. So those are the changes that we have done, but then essentially POS has become better from that perspective with these improvements.
That makes sense. So post-egg layer, right? Because I think we're all very familiar with this narrative of L2s all aggregated in different layers, hopefully interop being so smooth that everything works out quite nicely. What, let's say in 3 years, when this vision is complete and works perfectly fine, what like excites you on that side to see, maybe like in blockchain itself, not just Polygon, but what would be the Valhalla to reach here?
I mean, like, taking into consideration that the Ag layer is perfectly built and everything like that. Now, the next thing that we are trying to go out and look at is once the tech is stable, how we can bring more use cases on top of it, like with more integrations that essentially are happening from like the AI side and everything, how we can get those things real utility embedded more into the stack. But from a tech perspective, I think like with this being done, we also have Maiden coming out, right? So Maiden is on like testnet right now. We have one more testnet to go, and then probably the mainnet and everything like that. So that's like where we are rewriting the whole VM into a way it's an alt VM technically. So that's also something that we are like really bullish on, and we're trying to find ways in which like essentially we see that this getting fully developed. So we have like the entire stack base. So you come into a Polygon and you say, okay, this is what I want. In a customized mechanism, you have all of it available from Polygon that way.
Makes sense. So I guess the egg layer has to be out before Maiden releases, otherwise you're going to fragment your own ecosystem, right? And
absolutely. Yeah, I think like absolutely that is there, and like from a perspective of Maiden, like a lot of early use cases that we're trying to experiment with it are more towards payments, privacy, and everything like that, because Maiden can give you those things. Have we really scoped out or figured out what exactly would Maiden do from a perspective of overall use cases? I think we're still testing. We're still trying to see what is the things. So I think the bigger question is, it would not be like fragmentation. It would be like more customization and selection of choices. So like payments, like if someone wants privacy in that, okay, you should use Maiden. But absolutely, like I think our first focus is Ag layer. And once the Ag layer thing is done, like that is like the second focus that we have from that perspective.
All right. Then final kind of hot take. It's not necessarily Ethereum's roadmap, but of course like the proposed one by Justin, the Beam chain. Did it make you more bullish on Ethereum, or now that you kind of have the POS as the base layer, does it make you think perhaps the Polygon POS should no longer be a side chain and just provide finality itself, because we can't wait 10 years on the Beam chain?
I mean, like, so I have not delved deep into Beam chain, so I am still unaware of it. Thanks to all the events that we have here. But like, this is my complete personal opinion, has nothing to do with anyone at Polygon. Like personally, but I feel like the way POS works, apart from kind of going out and just settling the Merkle roots on Ethereum, technically it still works like more of a sidechain as an L1 rather than being an L2 from that perspective. And that's why like the entire 5-year hate on us is like, oh, you're not a L2, you're a sidechain. So from that perspective, I think we still are on that, like we're still there. We're still kind of working relentlessly the way we wanted to make Polygon POS as a ZK Validium chain. So the tech work is already underway. We're still evaluating that, like in the sense of like there are different opinions inside internally as well in the company to like what we should do next. But overall, like from even that perspective, like whatever I've read over it is still like bullish for Ethereum, like the way it is being built, and like we have always been slow in putting the tech out, and I don't think the reason is like we can't ship it fast. It's that the economic security and the assets on the chain are so high that this is something we have to do, irrespective of whatever the noise is.
Yeah, personally, I'm always bearish on Ethereum because I feel it's too slow in shipping speed, etc. But at the same time, I never bet against Ethereum because I think it always comes out ahead in the end. So still, I wouldn't short either.
Exactly.
All right, well, thank you so much for this, sir.
Thank you so much.